Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel today. I am so excited about this video. I am bringing you guys the mid-year book Freakout tag. I am always excited about this time of year, June, because so many booktubers release this video, and I think it's just a really great way for booktubers to kind of check in with their viewers and talk about the books that they've been reading so far this year, books that they've loved, books that they've hated. So I did do this tag last year. I will link that up in the cards above. I really loved how that video turned out, and also keeping with the tradition that I've started. In last year's video I wore purple eyeshadow, so I'm bringing that back for this year's video. I will also leave all of the questions slash prompts down in the description box below in case you guys want to do this tag yourselves. So without further ado, let's just get into it. The first tag question is best book you've read so far this year, and to be completely honest with you guys, this one was actually a pretty challenging prompt for me to come up with an answer with, because my reading year this year has been vastly different from 2019. When I did this video in 2019, it was very easy for me to come up with my favorite book, which I think that was Daisy Jones and the Six, and that's because last year I think I had only given maybe like 8 to 10 books 5 stars at that point. Whereas this year has been very different. I think I've given over like 25 books 5 stars so far this year, which on the one hand that's amazing because that means I'm reading a lot of great books and I'm very happy with my reading year so far. But at the same time, that makes it really difficult for me to pick like that one book that has stood out from the rest. So I did have to think about my answer for this one a lot, and I came up with a book that I read back in January, and that is going to be The Toll by Neal Shusterman. This is book 3 in his Scythe trilogy. For those of you guys that don't know what this trilogy is about, it is essentially a dystopian slash utopian society where death has essentially been conquered. There's no disease. Crime has been pretty much eliminated as well. There's basically this AI called the Thunderhead that runs the entire planet. And so to keep the population in check, they have these beings, these humans called scythes, and they are the only people that have the authority to essentially murder people, but they call it gleaning. And so these scythes can essentially kill anybody they want. They do have a quota that they have to keep up with, so they do have to murder a certain amount of people, you know, every year. And so the first book starts out with these two main characters. We have Citra and Rowan, and they become apprentices to Scythe Faraday. So there are definitely some parallels between this book and The Giver because of like that mentor slash apprentice kind of relationship that we have going on in the first book, but the series definitely gets crazier and crazier as it goes along. I will point out that there are a lot of people that did not love this final book. A lot of people I've seen give like 3 stars. I think mainly that's because this book is quite a bit longer than the first 2 books. I think the first 2 books are around like 450, maybe 500 pages, where this one I think is like over 600 pages. It's kind of a chunky book, and I will be upfront in saying that this book is also slower paced than the first 2 books. I think you just kind of have to be a bit more patient with it. But I'm just in awe of the world that Neal Shusterman created, and Neal Shusterman's world building is just top notch in my opinion. I also really enjoyed the characters, but it's really the world and the story that impressed me so much, and in my opinion this is the best book of the trilogy. I loved it so much. I loved the way that the book built up to the very end. I cannot recommend this trilogy enough, especially if you are someone who really does enjoy dystopian novels. I don't think you'll be disappointed by this series. Alright, next we have best sequel you've read so far this year. This was a very easy question for me to come up with an answer with, and that is going to be The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. So I binged this entire Cruel Prince trilogy, I think back in March. So if you want to see my reading vlog for that, I'll definitely link it up in the cards above. I had so much fun making that reading vlog because I really fell in love wholeheartedly with this series, and I haven't done that in quite a long time. This trilogy is by far one of my favorite series of all time. It is so well done. Holly Black is a master of writing books in this fairy realm. Just to give you a really quick synopsis, this series centers around Jude. She is, I think, 17 when this trilogy starts, and she has been living in the land of fairy for the last 10 years with her sisters. And this trilogy is all about her like gaining power in the high court of fairy, but also at the same time she's also struggling to stay in power at some points, and she loses power at other points. There's also a really great romance with Prince Carden, who is one of the princes of the high court. So yeah, that's just to give a basic overall synopsis. This is the third and final book. A lot of people were very disappointed in this. They gave it 3 stars because they thought it was too fast-paced and it was too short, and I completely disagree with that. I gave this 5 stars. For me, this book is neck and neck with the first book as far as what my favorite book of the trilogy is. I just loved the direction the story went in. I thought it was perfectly paced. I would definitely wholeheartedly recommend this series, especially if you love YA fantasy, if you love books that are centered around fae, or if you've never read books about fairies. I think that Holly Black does a really great job of introducing the reader to this world and to all of these very quirky and very interesting characters. The next prompt is new release you want to read. For that one, I'm going to go with House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 1 in her Crescent City series. I'm not sure if this is going to be a trilogy or how many books are going to be in it, but yeah, this is the first book. This came out in March of this year. A lot of people that I have been following have been reading this and raving about it. A lot of people have said that this is their favorite Sarah J. Maas book ever. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I do enjoy Sarah J. Maas's books. I love the Throne of Glass series. I have been enjoying the Court of Thorns and Roses series, but it's, to be quite honest, it's not my favorite. So I'm very interested to see what I think of her first foray into actual adult fantasy. I am going into this pretty blind because I do not want to be spoiled for anything. I do know that this is an urban modern fantasy, and this has to do with like angels and fallen angels and also fae. So I'm very excited to get into this. I might put this on my TBR for July. We'll just have to see. Next prompt is most anticipated release. I actually have 2 books for this. I just couldn't decide between them. The first one is How the King of Elfame Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This is a novella that is centered all around Prince Carden. It's going to be from his POV. And when this announcement hit book Twitter, it pretty much blew up. Nobody knew that this book was coming. Nobody knew that Holly Black was expanding the Cruel Prince series at all. So I'm very, very pumped for this to come out. I think it's coming out in late November. And then the other book that I'm so excited about is Crazy Stupid Bromance by Lyssa Kay Adams. This is the 3rd book in her Bromance book club series, and if you've been following me for a while, you would know that the first 2 books in that series are some of my absolute favorite romances ever. I just love them so much, so I can't wait to see what Lyssa Kay Adams does with this 3rd book. The 5th prompt is biggest disappointment. This was a pretty easy prompt for me to come up with an answer for, and that's going to be Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is a book that I unfortunately DNF'd at around page 60. I was so excited about this book because I know that I love Leigh Bardugo's writing style. I adore the Six of Crows duology. I did enjoy parts of the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I know that this book is very, very different from her whole Grisha verse, so I definitely went into this with an open mind, but at the same time, I really thought I was going to enjoy this. It's essentially about this girl, Alex Stern. She ends up going to Yale, and she kind of gets involved in this cult. There's definitely some like supernatural and fantastical elements thrown in here, so it's kind of one of those books that definitely spans multiple genres, but it's also definitely an adult fantasy book. And the reason why I DNF'd this was just I was so confused. I didn't really know what was going on. I was also very bored with her writing style, and I found that I really didn't care about any of the characters, and if I don't care about what's happening to these people, why am I reading this book, you know? So I did unfortunately end up DNFing it. The next prompt is biggest surprise, and that one is going to be Things You Save in a Fire by Catherine Center. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I don't read a lot of women's fiction. It's not a genre that particularly stands out to me because, in my opinion, it just feels like a lot of these books are written for a slightly older demographic than the kind of books that I read. But I had heard really good things about this book and about this author, so I did go ahead and pick it up from Book of the Month some months back. And I have to say, I absolutely adored this. I gave it 5 stars, which is just so surprising to me. So this is about this woman named Cassie. She is a firefighter and she's working in Austin, Texas, but she gets a call from her mother who lives in the Boston area that she is asking Cassie to come live with her because she recently had a surgery and so her eyesight isn't so great. So she definitely needs help kind of navigating around the house. And so Cassie leaves her job in Austin and she gets a new job around the Boston area. And this book is all about her like navigating this new fire station. There are no other women working at this station, and she ends up also falling in love with one of the rookies at this fire station. I love their romance so much. It is so sweet. Owen is just such a wonderful love interest, and yeah, I love their relationship so much, and I love the character development that Cassie goes through in this book. I definitely recommend this if you're someone like me that kind of stays away from women's fiction because I really think you might enjoy it. Favorite new to you author is the next prompt. This one was also a pretty easy one for me to come up with an answer for. That's going to be Tessa Dare. So I read this book, The Duchess Deal, late in 2019, and then I read 3 of her books this year so far, and I've given them all 5 stars. I adore her writing style. I think she is just a gem in the historical romance genre. I talk about her a lot on my channel, which is why I'm not going to talk about her too much in this video, but if you are interested in trying out any of her books, I definitely recommend going with The Duchess Deal. I think to this day, this is still my favorite book from her. The 8th prompt is newest fictional crush. This one was also a pretty easy prompt for me to come up with an answer for. That's going to be Thomas Cresswell from the Stalking Jack the Ripper series by Carrie Maniscalco. This is a YA historical fiction / mystery thriller kind of series, and while I overall feel kind of meh about this series, Thomas Cresswell is by far my favorite character of this series. I think he is just a wonderful, wonderful love interest for Audrey Rose, who is our main character. Thomas is literally one of the most perfect male characters that I have ever read from. He is endlessly supportive of everything that Audrey Rose wants to do with her life. What I love about Thomas is that he's not afraid to show his emotions. He is very good at communicating, not only with Audrey Rose, but with all of the characters in this series. And even when Thomas shows like a hint of jealousy issues, he even checks himself. He's very aware that, you know, that's wrong of him to feel jealous of other male characters that Audrey Rose interacts with and things like that. So yeah, I could go on about him forever, but he is just absolutely amazing. And literally his character is the only reason that I would want to reread this series. All right, we have just a few prompts left. The next one is newest favorite character. This one was so easy for me to come up with an answer for. That's going to be Jude Duarte herself from the Cruel Prince trilogy by Holly Black. I did my reading vlog for this trilogy. I talked so much about Jude's character because she is one of the most interesting and compelling heroines in a YA fantasy series that I've read from in a very long time. She kind of reminds me of Lady Macbeth from Macbeth because of how much she just hungers for power and kind of her struggle with staying in power, like I talked about earlier in this video. It's just so interesting to me. There are just so many interesting facets to her character and her personality, and she is just an icon and a queen. All right, next prompt is book that made you cry. For this one, I'm going to talk about The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I think this is the last book that I read that actually made me like sob crying. I mean, I've definitely teared up with quite a few books that I've read recently, but this book really just gutted me. So this is essentially about this woman, Calla. She ends up going to Alaska to visit her father, who is terminally ill, and so she's kind of trying to patch the relationship with her father. She's been living in Canada while he's been living in Alaska her whole life, so they definitely don't have a great relationship. And so while she's there kind of mending that relationship, she also meets this guy Jonah, who works for Calla's father, and so they also develop a romantic relationship. I definitely recommend this book if you're looking for a really emotional family story, and also if you're looking for a pretty good romance. I will say I didn't absolutely adore the romance between Jonah and Calla because I think Jonah's an asshole, but I do think it's pretty solid, and combined with the whole family plot line, I just couldn't give this less than 5 stars. And on the flip side of that, the next prompt is book that makes you happy. I had to go with Undercover Bromance by Lyssa Kay Adams. I just talked about this series earlier in the video, but this is the second book in this series, and for those of you guys that don't know, this centers around a group of guys in Nashville, Tennessee, and they all come together to read romance novels so that they can better understand their spouses and their partners. And this book in particular made me laugh so many times. It's just a lot of funny and ridiculous humor. These books just make me so happy because of just how cute the romances are. I just love the scenes when the Bromance Book Club actually gets together and discusses the novels that they're reading. All right, guys, we're almost there. 2 prompts left. So the 12th prompt is most beautiful book you bought or received, and that one was yet another easy prompt for me to come up with an answer for. I'm actually going to go with 2 different editions of the same book, and that is going to be Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. So this edition is the exclusive Waterstones edition. I absolutely adore all of these swords that we have going on. Here's the spine, and then here's the back. I just think that Waterstones always does an amazing job with the special editions that they do for the Shadowhunters books. And then this is the original edition, which I also think is stunning. I love the artwork. Okay, and we're at the very last prompt. That is going to be books you need to finish by the end of the year. There's quite a few. So as far as series goes, I definitely want to at least start the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown, the Bloodline series by Rochelle Mead, which is the spin-off of Vampire Academy, which I read last year. I really want to get started on the Ember and the Ashes series by Sabaa Tahir. And then as far as standalones go, I have been buying so many books to better educate myself about the Black Lives Matter movement and about just overall the issues that we face in our country, that we've been facing in our country for hundreds of years, because to be a true activist, I need to be so much more educated than I am right now. So yeah, as far as standalones, I definitely want to make a dent in that TBR. Okay guys, that's going to be it for this mid-year book freakout tag. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I would love it if you would push that like button and if you would subscribe, and I thank you in advance if you do. Please leave a comment down below if you guys want to answer these prompts yourself just in the comments. I would love to see your responses. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!